Hi, everyone. One common question I get in Toastmasters is, how do you answer table topics? These people have a lot of stress about it and they feel that it's difficult. So let's just take a look at some of the myths around it. One of them is, it's so easy for you. You're a natural. You just make it look so easy. Well, it takes practice and practice. You have to be funny. You can't do a serious answer. Well, you sure can do a serious answer. You don't have to be funny. But you must be perfect. So people set up expectations about their performance in table topics, like they have to do well. Well, in table topics, there's no such thing as doing well. You have to treat the Toastmasters room as the gymnasium of experimentation and practice so that you can prepare to speak well back in your workplace or back with your charities and different groups. It isn't about performing at Toastmasters. We're learning at Toastmasters how to perform well, how to do it well. So in the gymnasium, it's okay to drop the weights, to fall down, to experiment, to have fun and do crazy things. One of them is you can't structure a table topics answer, and you sure can. It just takes a little bit of forethought, a little bit of practice, but you can certainly do it. Finally, that you can't prepare. Well, I'm going to suggest to you that you can prepare to answer table topics. So how do you prepare? What can you do to get ready to answer a table topics question? Well, one of them is to have an opinion about many matters, to be informed as to what's going on in the world right now. Listen to your radio. I listen to news radio, and I'm constantly listening to debates and seminars and interviews. And as I'm listening, I'm always asking myself, what do I think? How do I feel about that? YouTube is a great source for information. Whatever information you want to find, it's bound to be something on YouTube about it. And many of the news media have online websites. It's all there. Wikipedia is a great source for many thousands, well, millions, as I can see it right now, 6 million articles on Wikipedia. So there's no end to the information there. And the quality of the information on Wikipedia is pretty good. And Toastmasters.org, if you ever get through all of the pages of guidance and information on Toastmasters.org, please let me know. I haven't done it yet myself. Collect stories. Ensure that when you're doing your speeches, that you collect your stories. Even if you don't write down your stories before you give a speech, it's useful afterwards to reflect on it and maybe synergize it into a short story. One great source of stories is your icebreaker speech, your first speech. Many people deliver the icebreaker speech as a chronological telling of many aspects of their lives. And each aspect of their life, whether it be childhood or college or work or adulthood or being a parent, there's all kinds of situations and stories in there that you can write down. So as you're living your life, always be aware of stories. For example, when you're at the store and you witness a customer service interaction, those are great times when you can learn lessons and you can relate these stories to others, whether it be being kind, giving better customer service, how to get better customer service. There's all kinds of examples in there. If you go on vacation, there's all kinds of things happening, all kinds of stories, new cultures, new people. Write it down. As you write them down, these stories and you have a wider collection of stories, these stories will be available to you when you need to answer a table topics question. A lot of people like quotations, memorize quotations, and keep a list of them. The ones that are particularly resonant with you, write them down, keep them in a list, and they will become available for you when you need to answer a table topics question. Write down your own jokes. Many people say, "Oh, I'm not very funny." Well, you are funny, and we're all funny. We all have humorous moments in our lives. Often we'll say something funny, someone else will laugh at it, and we don't take the time to write it down. Write it down, even if it doesn't feel like it is as funny as it could be. You can always refine it later, and these jokes can be told again. It's all right. Speeches. Do lots and lots of speeches. The more you speak, the more of a repertoire you will have available to you, so that when you're answering a table topics question, you might have a question that relates to something you've already spoken about. I was fortunate one time to be in the District 61 table topics contest, and I was asked a question about procrastination, and I'd already done a speech on it. So I simply got up and gave a shorter version of that speech, and as it turns out, I won. I was kind of embarrassed. I was so naive at the time that I went to the contest chair and I said, I apologize. I'd done a speech on this subject. He said, it's okay. It's just how it turns out. So the more you speak, the easier it will be in general to answer table topics questions. So we also can have a method for answering table topics. So here's mine, and we're going to go through it in detail, but having a strategy in place for answering table topics questions will be much better, far better than having no strategy at all. If you have no strategy, you'll tend to do a word association, going from thought to meandering new thought until 2 minutes are up. So the strategy is to have some structure to it. But how do you do that? And that's what we're going to cover today. My strategy is to begin with a memory map. And when I am receiving my question, I fill in the memory map. And it's very simply the thesis. What is my answer to the question? To have a thesis means I understand the question that is being asked and I have answered it directly. If you happen to be in the table topics contest, one of the requirements is to answer the question directly. Otherwise, answering it indirectly is fine. After the thesis or the main idea, the answer to the question, the next step is to have a point. What story or idea will amplify that thesis statement? And do you have a second one? Now, it turns out that sometimes you might just have, instead of points, you might have a story. And if you have just one chronological story, you're going to need an opening and a conclusion for it to give people a sense of structure. Some people say, well, you have to have 3 points. The rule of thirds, it's called. And well, yeah, there's a rule of thirds, but it doesn't apply to this. And I've noticed that it's easier to remember 2 points than it is to remember 3. And also, having 2 points gives you more opportunity to go more into detail on each point than if you have 3 points or 4 points. If you have 3, it's like a stone skipping across the top of a pond of water. You're just touching on your points and you don't get enough time to get into detail, to get into a story. But with 2, you get more time for each point. So at this time, we would do a memory map exercise where we would just practice filling them in. So if I said, for example, tell me about your favorite color, and your answer might be red, then very quickly you might think, well, red relates to a love. And you might say that, well, red reminds you of the color of a sunset. So fine. And we could connect with the idea of love and a sunset. So the thing that I say in doing this is go with your first instinct. So instead of arguing and saying, oh, no, that's not a very good answer, the first ideas you come up with, go with it and make it work. Experiment with that. So I came up with the color red and love and sunset. So how long did that take? It just took a couple of seconds. I commit to it and I go and I'm good to go. If we were doing this in a workshop, we'd have a group share and people would give their answers, how they answered at this point, the memory map exercise. Most often, what I see is people getting too complicated. The idea with the memory map is to have the fewest number of ideas possible, the fewest number of words. Instead of words, if it works for you, you might use a picture. So instead of the word red, you might visualize the color red, and then instead of the word love, you might visualize your spouse or your child or your pet or something that you love. You might visualize a sunset. So once again, if words work for you, use words. If an image works for you, use an image. And that's fine. We are good to go in answering our question. Then we need to convert the logical model of thesis point to a structure, because a speech begins with an opening and it ends with a conclusion. In the middle is a body. Now the opening can have an indirect captivating opening or a direct opening. A direct opening would be, my favorite color is red. An indirect opening would be something like, oh, there are so many colors in the rainbow, but if I had to name my favorite among them all, I believe it would be red. So I opened by referring to other ideas, so that's indirect, and then zeroing in on my answer. You could want to make it captivating if possible. And then the thesis, which was my favorite color is red, and then a map. So a map would be something like this. So we just said that my favorite color is red because red reminds me of love, and I see love in the sunset every day. Now, we haven't gone into the story of love. We have gone into the story of a sunset. We've only indicated them. We've only identified that they are the two parts of our talk. Now, as we speak, we better speak about two ideas, love and sunsets. And when the audience hears them come by, because they've had it in the map sentence, it will make sense to them and they will go, aha, yes. And if you, in the conclusion, add a third idea, they'll be confused. So we need a map sentence indicating the structure to follow. Then we begin point one, transitioning from the body. We could move in the speaking area. We could change our voice. We could change our tempo. We could go into a story. So we transition into the first point. We tell a story or the example that we're going to talk about. In this case, our first point was love, and we're going to talk about love. I could talk about anything. The audience doesn't know what I was going to talk about. So no one will ever come to you and say, well, You spoke about love, and you talked about how to make tomato soup, and I don't think that's the right subject for love. Well, if you love tomato soup, it's the right subject. It's yours. It's your speech. Anything that you say is right, and no one will ever, and it's never happened that someone comes to me and says, I think that was the wrong story, and your table topics answer, it's yours, and commit to it. So I chose to tell the story of my little dog Ringo many years ago. He was a mixed German Shepherd and Newfoundland dog, and he was such a joy to be with. And I was a child around grade 4. We used to play out in the snow, play out in the yard, and he was just a fantastic dog. And I can fill with details there. Doesn't matter what the details are. No, all the details that I possibly tell are fine. Then I go on to my second subpoint, which was what? It was sunset. So it'd be very easy for me to say how much I enjoy looking at a sunset. And in Newfoundland, where I come from, there's a saying that goes, red in the morning, sailor's warning, red at night, sailor's delight, indicating that tomorrow the weather would be fine if the sunset was red. Is that true? No, it's not true all the time. And then I could easily say that every day when I see a red sunset, I remember back to when I was in grade 4 when I had our dog Ringo, and that makes it very easy. So I tell a little bit of story about Newfoundland, I tell about that famous saying, and then I say how the sunset reminds me of my love for my dog. Then I can go into the conclusion, repeating that the color red reminds me of love, and goodness knows there isn't any overabundance of love in the world. We can always use a little bit more, and how every sunset that I see reminds me of not only the love that I had for my dog, but love in all of its forms, for all of its things. So I encourage you, when you see your next sunset and you see the red in it, think about the love you have for the world and for your loved ones. And so we have a somewhat captivating close, and then it ends. So our time to do that is 2 minutes. There you have it, going from the logical model of thesis, point, point, to the speech structure from opening, my 2 points, and then the conclusion. And notice that in the opening and conclusion, they basically mirror each other, where we have an indirect, captivating, open thesis and map in the opening. In the conclusion, we have the map again, so that when the audience hears it, they understand what you covered. We have the thesis, and we have something of a captivating close. We could say it's a call for the audience to think, act, or feel. So as you are getting ready to answer your table topics question, you're at your club or you're in the table topics contest, get into peak state, get into a mental state that engenders success. So visualize yourself speaking confidently, visualize the audience responding to you, and then prepare your mental map. Get your mind ready for it. Empty it out, thesis, point, point, and you have blanks in there, so that when you hear the question, you fill in those blanks and you're able to answer your question. Listen to the question intently. Listen for what it's really saying. Suppress your nervousness, stay calm, and understand the actual question. For example, lately we hear a lot about professional sports figures, but tell us about your favorite color. So the first part of the question was just a red herring. The actual question is, tell us about your favorite color. It has nothing at all to do with the first part of the question. My point is to listen carefully for the actual question and answer the actual question. Then fill in your memory map and get ready to answer your question. When you speak, speak with self-assurance and confidence. Sometimes be a little bit weird. It's okay. Remember that you're experimenting and playing. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter at all if you go into silence and stand in silence for 2 minutes. It doesn't matter. It's just table topics. It's just having fun with a group of your friends. So go easy and have fun. At this point, if we were doing a workshop, we would have some practice. We would have you answer multiple questions. And but with this isn't a workshop, but if you're going to take this video and use it at your club for a workshop, at this point you do some practice. So remember, a method to this madness. We want ongoing mental preparation, being prepared to answer questions with stories and study and quotations and writing your own jokes. Practice using your table topics map at every Toastmasters meeting. I highly encourage you at your club that the structure of your table topics is not that everyone gets a piece of paper, is not that someone is named. So the next question is for Bob. Bob, what is your favorite color? But that on every question, you first ask the question, ask it twice, and then name the speaker. Now, the speaker is known ahead of time to the table topics master, but named only after the question. Why is that? Well, it puts everyone in the room through the mental exercise of getting ready and thinking about their answer. Much of this exercise is about thinking, not so much in doing. So if the structure is ask the question, name the speaker, everyone goes through the mental exercise. If you're inclined to use the phrase, it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes, I'm going to say to you, there's no such thing as failure. There's no such thing as mistakes when what you're doing is learning. There's only learning. And that changes the whole thing. Think back to when you first learned how to ride a bicycle. Do you remember that? You got on the bicycle and you put your foot on the pedal and you went forward. For sure, we all wobbled. And some of us even fell down. What did we do? We got back up and did it again. So were there those first wobbles mistakes? Not at all. Not at all. They were a natural part of the learning process. Likewise, what you used to call failures and mistakes in answering table topics are not failures at all. They're the natural part of the learning process. And all it is we need to be willing to wobble. And everyone, go have fun.